Hello guys, and welcome to today's episode of the LinkedIn Outreach Guys. Today's episode we're going to be taking a more in-depth look at LinkedIn messaging content. However, before we get started, if you're watching from home, you'll likely have already noticed that we're in a new studio and we've got a fourth member joining us today. So what we'll do is a quick introduction for Mikey, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail about the studio itself. So, Mikey, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'll do a little intro for Mikey, just a bit of background. So obviously we started the Lead Lab Social, which is our sister business, which specialises in paid ads, social content, etc., as opposed to the Lead Lab and the LinkedIn Outreach Guys, which is really just about LinkedIn automation at scale. We get clients, used to get clients ask us all the time, can you do ads? Can you do content in the sense of like posting and stuff like that? And it's just not what we do. We're a lead generation company. So we've partnered with Mikey. We've started the Lead Lab Social. He's got over 15 years experience. We know each other because he's been a client previously. We used to work with a really cool company called Blair. Back in the days where telemarketing was your best bang for your buck for cold outreach, as opposed to LinkedIn nowadays. We used to have three telemarketers on site, wasn't it? Yeah, three. Which is a bit peculiar. Normally when people use outsourced telemarketing, they normally tend to be in our own office. But they happen to be an extra Blair. They were a cool, procurement company?
Yeah, like procurement software, wasn't it? Online sort of agencies bidding for work and things like that. It was pretty cool. Yeah. It was a little bit before its time.
And it was heavily funded, wasn't it?
It was.
It was heavily funded. So it was something a lot of rich people believed in. I think it's still going, but it's slightly rebranded. And we worked with them for 2 or 3 years, so it went really well, to be fair. And I think they ended up doing it actually in-house eventually, which made sense really from the start to me. But, we solved the problem for them. Mikey has a lot of experience from working with him back then. We realised he knew exactly what he was talking about. That was 7 or 8 years ago. And he's gone on to work with other businesses as a consultant. And it was just the next step for him really to have his own limited company, to start delivering himself. So I don't know if you want to add anything, or is that a fair summarise?
I think that's we'll leave it there.
Yeah. And then, I guess the studio, just briefly, as you've probably seen our terrible Teams podcast, episode 1 and 2, we're sort of just in the process of getting it done, doing it, working out if it works, and then obviously moving on to the next level to our new studio now. We also rent it as well, which is the Devon Podcast Studio website and Instagram, so people can rent it, have it branded for them as well. But just for us at the minute.
Fantastic. What we'll do is provide all links in the description and such below, so if you want to have a look at it, check it out. Obviously, go into a bit more detail, see if it's something that you want to get invested in. Do you think it's a good time to start a podcast in 2024?
I think it's a great time to start a podcast in 2024. And I'm so glad you asked me. Mainly because you can sit here for an hour or two, whatever's right for you, and have a conversation around a few topics. And that one can be posted on all your platforms, from YouTube to Spotify to Instagram. And then also from that long form, you can clip it up and have social content for the whole month. So that's a big thing for us to be able to sit here for an hour or two and then create not only a long form content that people can come and invest their time and learn about what we do in more detail, but most importantly for us, we can clip up the really highlighted parts and then consistently post them through our content, which will be great for a lot of other people that want to do that themselves. Don't have the time or the facility to do it. They can literally show up, do an hour or two, and then from there, they can have social content that one elevates their brand because they are speaking as an influencer, but also short clips that they can post, sponsored ad, etc. And also, it's the sort of content that keeps on giving. Once it's posted, whether it be long form or short form, you literally can still be looked at in 2 or 3 years' time and give credibility to what you do and a store of information as well of your experience. So, we're huge fans, obviously, and we're going on the journey ourselves. So, open to educate other people on how to do it as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And I think that leads us quite nicely, actually, into today's episode, obviously focusing in a bit more about the LinkedIn messaging content. And I'm glad today that we've obviously got Harry with us, as he's the guy in-house that goes through all of the clients and gets everything approved, makes sure it's actually fit for duty. So, Harry, I suppose you'll be the best person to jump straight in regards to what is content, what works, what doesn't, what do you see being the best approach?
Okay, I think it depends on the nature of the approach. I think generally we're going to be talking a lot about automated outreach and doing it at scale. And weirdly, or funny enough, one of the best aspects of it is hiding the benefit. So you're doing this automated and you're doing this at scale, but the messaging has to look the complete opposite. It has to look, it was personal, it has to look like it was written there and then. So a big part of it is there's a big paraphrasing exercise. So for example, when people want to start this at scale, they may have existing material from past campaigns, be it email or something like that. They may have sales decks, brochures, proposals. A lot of the time it's gathering all that information, paraphrasing it into just a short sequence of messages. They might be 3 or 4 steps. And it's all about making it look like a person wrote it in the moment. I think there's a lot of businesses and organizations out there with some really exciting products and really exciting services. And the temptation is always there to just give it to the prospect. They want them to see everything. And I get that. And I think a lot of people do understand that. And I think that's a natural temptation people fall into. But ultimately, I think when you're doing this at scale, you have to factor in that a lot of prospects are receiving this at scale. So, for example, C-level contacts in big businesses, they're receiving messages constantly. And with that in mind, I think when you write it, you have to write it that's respectful for their time as well as yours. So it has to be short, to the point, and just appear as if it was written by a person at the time, writing to another person at the time.
How important are the first couple of lines?
I think considering the value of people's time, that does correlate in the messaging. And the idea, as I said, people want to, release lots of information, but you have to get the key things in quick because you have to respect their attention span. You referred to the first few lines, and there's an extra sort of facet to that. And I'd say the extra aspect to that is that the first line is also what you're going to see on your phone screen from a notification. So particularly prospects who are receiving correspondence and seeing it firsthand on their phones, they're going to see that first line, and that's probably your first touch point and the first chance to get them in, as opposed to maybe traditional desktop messaging where you I guess a similar experience in the past would have been subject lines on an email. But with LinkedIn, you have that first line, they might see a notification on their phone, and then the more they engage, the more lenience you have, and the more you can go into further detail. But it is a case of, it's just taking advantage of that. It's getting your foot in the door and making the most of that time they've given you.
I mean, that's one of the things I say to clients all the time is like the difference between LinkedIn outreach and email outreach is people can look at an email message and they can literally say, I'm being sold to before they even open it. The beauty of LinkedIn, once you get past that connection base, they almost have to read that first line or two to see if it's valuable for them, i.e. someone buying as opposed to selling. And then if you can get their attention in that window with something that is interesting to them, then they're going to read the rest of the content. Is that sort of in your mind when you write the content messaging?
Yeah, I think one key difference is when it comes to emails, it gets sent to that person and it's in their inbox. So the dynamic's a little different with LinkedIn because there's that connection request first. So when the connection request is sent and they accept it, it's kind of more of a conversation opener. Not a conversation opener as such, but it opens the conversation. They've given you something back in the sense of, okay,
come on in.
Yeah,
come into my house. But they haven't said, do you want a cup of tea yet, basically.
We'll go with your analogy. Yeah, that's essentially it.
Yeah.
They've given you more of a window as opposed to an email where you just send it to them and hope for a response. They've kind of given you that little bit of engagement, and that opens the door a little bit. And as you progress, as you say, you have a few lines, they have more interest, you can sort of...
And the moral of the story is to not get ignored when you get in the house. Because if you do, you just sat there, you've asked 3 or 4 questions on automation and they've not responded. You're struggling with my analogy.
I'm worried how far you can take this analogy. But yeah, I guess what ultimately we're trying to say is kind of seize the moment to agree. It's the same as...
Well, attention always comes back to attention for me, doesn't it?
And it always has to a degree. If you think like old forms of marketing, be it
telemarketing or
space in magazines, it's the same concept. You just got to make the most of your window. And not overestimate the size of your window, which we mentioned about earlier, where sort of pile on content.
Yeah, i.e. they're not going to read 5 or 6 lines unless you get their attention in those first ones, which you often find you get clients that are just, they want to throw loads of, I use the word content loosely, but info about them, as opposed to what's going to benefit the reader.
Well, directly, yeah. I think there's a lot. That information can take many different forms. Sometimes they have loads of amazing features, or they've worked with lots of great people in the past, or they've got some great stats from working with people in the past. There's lots of really, really good information there. And it's not to say it can't be released to them at some point. It comes back to what you said about the house and the window. It's just making the most... I can't go with your analogy, it's too weird. I want to, but then I'm going to stop.
It's too silly for your intelligent brain, isn't it?
I suppose the best way to know it
is why we're a good
team.
team.
What colour the bed sheets are.
Oh,
right.
Shop Ollie's going to go to the next level.
Yeah. So to rein it back in a bit, yeah, it is about seizing that window, making the most of it. Yes, there's temptation, lots of features, but they're not mutually exclusive in the sense that, and as Mike, you know, that really, really old first rule of marketing is make it about them.
Yep.
So when it comes to those features and things like that, if you can communicate it in a way that it's helping them and actually helping the person, relevant to the person, that's probably the way to.
As opposed to info, it's more tangible.
So,
does that translate to ads and to content, the same sort of the principles?
Just to touch on what Harry was saying there first, because I'm one of these people that does still receive a lot of LinkedIn outreach messages, especially from agencies, SEO consultants, that type of thing. If that first line, if I feel in that first line that I am being directly sold to, or, you know, I get a lot, especially from agencies, you know, the first line, we work with these FTSE 500 companies. I don't really care. I don't really care. I'm not accepting that connection request. Even if you are the best agency in the world, like that is not going to get me, because I know as soon as I hit connect, I'm going to get a follow-up message that's going to be purely trying to sell to me again.
Well, that's why it's so important to actually connect with the content to the audience as well.
Absolutely.
If you're reaching out and giving an example of a big business that you've worked with, the first thing I think of as a smaller business is, well, am I even the right size client?
Too expensive, or you think too expensive straight away.
So it's got to be all about, I want the message to be all about me, or solving a problem that I've got. But also just to give me enough for me to be intrigued, but not too much for me to make an instant decision there and then. Do you know what I mean? For me, it is more about the creating that sort of initial intrigue and to then move on to the next step.
What sort of kickback do you get from clients, Harry? Because I know you do get kickback sometimes based on obviously our sector experience of writing shorthand LinkedIn outreach at scale is very different when you deal with a market person. Even if you take Mikey as an example, let's imagine Mikey was a client again. His beliefs around content would be different to yours based on our LinkedIn outreach experience. Obviously, if you write with an email copywriter, it's slightly closer, but you obviously get marketing people, no disrespect, that have a different outlook on content.
I think there's different outlooks to the execution, but the fundamentals should ultimately be the same. As I said before, it's a universal rule of marketing when it comes to making it about them. So a lot of it's universal. It's just application. One thing you raised, Mike, which I'd expand on is the idea of intrigue. And earlier you asked me about kickbacks. I'm going to rephrase that to feedback rather than kickbacks. But I'm going to say when it comes to feedback, it's
but I don't think feedback's the right word, because it's not often. A lot of people do trust us and go, okay, you've been doing this for a long time. But some people do say, oh no, we want our content to be like this. So you do get people based on
the client.
100%. You get the client challenge. Challenge is the right word, because they do challenge. Yeah.
I think it might be a surprising experience with clients we've worked with, because as I said before, they have all these great details, they have great services, facts, stats, previous clients, etc. And they always give it to us, and what they get back is quite a short, and I guess a negative connotation would be vague, but as you said, it's all about intrigue and it's getting that curiosity. A lot of the detail is withheld for later, I suppose, is the best way of describing it.
I think kind of the pitfall of the introduction, isn't it? You want it to be short and sweet in the sense of, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is why I wanted to reach out and speak to you about it. But without giving, this is who we've worked with for the last 5 years, the results that we've had from it, what we do in our industry and why we're so specific in doing that.
It's very samey.
All of it is very samey, but also at the point of, when does anybody actually have half an hour to read your first introduction message that you're actually going through?
We always get in this debate about white labels. Because obviously, we're like a million miles away from white labels from what we do as a lead lab, LinkedIn outreach guys. It's shorthand content. But obviously some of the companies we work with, for Mikey, prime example, is they love white labels.
Oh, white papers.
White papers, sorry. Bloody hell. White papers, a long day. A lot of white papers. And really just trying to get your head around the concept of them and how they resonate to people and how they have, I guess it comes to, like, if you target a small business owner like me, the chances of me reading a white paper is just...
No chance.
There's no chance, is there? Yeah. But one thing you've explained to me recently is a lot of the reason people they do that is similar to like a podcast where they create a long form bit of content, but then they can regurgitate smaller parts of that across all platforms, just like you could with a podcast.
It's actually a good comparison, actually, podcast with a white paper, because you can repurpose that big, let's call it a hero piece of content, if you like, into much smaller bite-sized chunks, as you say. So with a white paper, especially if it's targeted at CEOs, board directors, SVPs, again, they're going to be time poor. Short, sharp videos, 10-slide deck that gives them key insights.
So obviously, I imagine the longer form content of it is for people that are just really interested in. It's like sending a proposal after someone's had an interest in LinkedIn or in a message from outreach. And look,
it's not to say that a CEO won't sit down and read a white paper. He'll likely do it in the evening, once he's got work done, got the kids to bed, and he's sat down having a glass of wine. He might read it in his own time, but you can't rely on the fact that he may sit down and read that white paper. So you've got to give him it in lots of different formats, in much smaller bite-sized chunks, on different channels as well. To ensure that your audience actually get the content that you want them to see in the format that they can actually.
Obviously, to go back to the Blair days when we used to work together when you were a client before we started the Lead Lab Social, is the world changed in the sense that now actually people want video content or audio content as opposed to a white paper?
I think
in the sense that they would then be sit at home and watch it on YouTube or listen to an audio of it, or is it not progressed that way?
I think as creatures, if you like, on this, giant space rock going through the atmosphere. Look, we are consuming content from the minute we wake up till the minute we go to bed, not just at work. Listening to a podcast in the kitchen when you're making breakfast, listen to the radio on the way to work, then you've got all the content at work, then you come back and it's social media, TV, all the rest of it. We are just consumers of content every single waking minute. And I think that's what's changed is how much content we're consuming as humans, and the amount of different formats and channels that we can now consume that content through.
So from that, you get time limitations because there's only so much time someone can consume content, and also platform limitations of making sure you're getting to people on the right platforms.
Exactly.
And I guess that's my point I know we've gone way off topic here, but is the white paper going to die off eventually and it's going to become more video or audio because it's much harder for someone to spend their time?
I think white papers specifically, there will always be a place for them, that sort of academic style of long form written content that provides a lot of insight. That is still going to be key. But I do agree that the other content formats, that the repurposing of that content is just going to become more and more important. Okay. I think especially as we talk about time and people being time poor, it's moving in a direction where it's not just going to be CEOs and board directors that are going to be time poor. And there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of content. We're fighting for attention from people that are, obviously their attention is trying to be wrangled by everyone. So,
to move the kind of back towards obviously the discussion that we have at hand, the next thing that we kind of wanted to go a bit more in detail with is the variation of different messaging and different content that's going to go within that. Obviously, a campaign that we run a lot of split testing, a lot of different dimensions with the type of outreach that we have, and that kind of falls a lot into, again, kind of discovering what your target audience actually is and the content that's going to resonate with them. In the sense of, if you're reaching out to a high value net worth individual, do you need to be more direct in that sort of approach? If you're reaching out to financial advisors within the professional services sector, is that, again, a different approach that you need to be taking? Maybe a few more messages in that sequence. What are they going to be seeing? What do you want them to be seeing in that sense?
I would say when it comes to almost every marketing campaign, they're almost always quite scientific, aren't they? In terms of you have your constants, you have your variables, and when it comes to a campaign, again, quite commonly, your variables will be the content or the messaging that's going out, target audience, timing, there's all sorts, where it's coming from. There's a lot of factors. And there's, as a result of that, there's a lot of room for split testing. So there's split testing in terms of target audience and split testing in terms of content. I think that's always going to be there. I think, especially with, I was going to call it modern platforms, but it's basically a platform the last 20, 30 years, is the metrics are there to support that and enable you to be scientific. And I think as a result of that, I'd almost always recommend it. We mentioned before about, in fact, I think you mentioned before earlier, Ollie, about personalization and, referring to big businesses when you're targeting a small business owner. Mm-hmm. So where we're talking about split testing, it's not necessarily split testing. It's more a case of just making intelligent segmentation. So you can run separate campaigns that are relevant to target audiences. So you just run effectively sub-campaigns, because that's not difficult essentially to do. We're talking a lot about automated processes here, and sometimes there's a bit of a hybrid where you want it to be automated for the sake of scale, but you want it to be personalized for the purpose of the prospect as well. And I guess ultimately what most people are trying to do is trying to strike that balance and get as personalized and as relevant as possible, but as automated and scalable and easy to execute as possible. And I guess that's the compromise, the in-between, is to run something that's automated, run something that's at scale, but also segment it in certain ways so that it is personalized. We've talked a lot so far about people being time poor, especially at C-level. But ultimately, there are people who are more in other roles who do want that detail. And that's probably why the white papers won't die. There's people in certain fields, be it, technical roles, ops roles, where they will want to see that information, because ultimately it still evokes a sense of trust, I suppose.
Yeah, they'll essentially have to assess that content and then feed the key insights up to the C-suite. So.
I think, to go back to your original question, it's quite it's so bespoke in that every client you deal with, it's so bespoke based on who they're targeting, the job title, the size of business, blah, blah, blah. So it's very difficult. There is no one size fits all. That's sort of the reason you need the relevant experience across all the sectors that we have, so that you can take that to the client and give them advice, basically.
Yes. Yeah. It comes back. I feel like we're going to say this a lot throughout this podcast, but it comes back to making it about you, making it about the person. So whilst you're making it about the person, ultimately, a lot of I guess the recurring theme will be is how you're helping that person, why it's of interest to that person. And it's because of that, it's never going to be rinse and repeat, because it's all about how does the business in question
to that
help that person.
Yeah.
So it's...
And a same company can be targeting one job title and have a totally different messaging than targeting a different job title, because the FD has a different pain to the MD, as an example.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And obviously, as a marketeer, I think if you're targeting marketing people, we get our backs up a lot easier and we can spot, automated LinkedIn messaging, automated emails a lot easier. So if it is marketing people that, that you're targeting with LinkedIn outreach or email outreach.
Or even MDs, managing directors, small business owners like me.
Yeah.
I mean, we get targeted constantly. The one thing that gets me is I'd go as far as to say AI content is not ready yet. We've tried it with a few clients ourselves, haven't we? It's a slight side step from the conversation, but I mean, the one that frustrates me the most, and I've told Harry about it in a conversation the other day, is when Mabel messaged me saying, oh, you went to West X High School, and then they go off on the sales pitch. And I'm like, a second I see you go on the website, I stop reading because I'm so insulted, my intelligence. And that's what the AI has pulled off my information to get my hook based on that. First thing, I don't want to even think about high school ever again. For a start, it was a terrible time in my life. But secondly, I instantly know I'm being AI'd, which is so ingenuine. I think there will come a day where AI can pull information from the internet and pull that into content and it actually really feel authentic. At the minute, it's not there. No. It needs to be written in a way that feels familiar. And we've tried this with multiple clients. I mean, I don't know if you want to go into detail about our experience. Obviously, we won't talk about the client, etc. But we've partnered with AI content. And you're better to elaborate, Harry, without saying any detail, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that there's a lot of technical aspects that aren't ready, even though the opportunity's there. You talked about AI, but there's also simple things which, again, have existed in other channels, such as email marketing, is importing data. You mentioned about pulling through education and things like that. And also, I guess one really, really commonly repeated marketing mistake is importing things like company names and job titles. We've seen it in emails, we've seen it in LinkedIn messages where it'll import their full name and it'll be impersonal, or it'll import the company name and it's got limited, formerly known as.
Capitals.
And
or full capitals.
Yeah, full capitals. Or,
reaching through to, hi, I see that you work at big name company.
And marketers are doing that intentionally. They're putting emojis in their names and things like that to catch them out. I feel like a lot of time you can spot it, but yeah.
I do complete most website forms in block capitals now, just so that I can identify.
Slight difference, yeah. Yeah, no, I just, I always go back. It's funny, I was telling this story to you the other day. Being a younger bloke, a long time ago, 16 years old, I was sat in my father's kitchen and there was a kitchen salesman in there, really high-end kitchen. It was like $4 or $5 or something at the time, long time ago, obviously. I won't say how long. And he said, if you buy today, you get 30% off. After tomorrow, it's gone. And I'm sat there as a salesperson or as a marketing person, and I'm thinking, there's no worse sales technique than insulting my intelligence. Because I'm instantly like, I'll go somewhere else. I'll walk somewhere else to find someone who's going to sell it to buy from, who's not going to insult me. And I think that's huge in content, especially when you try to use AI or whatever. If you're targeting a high value individual, whether it be C-suite or whatever, these professional people, especially in what we do, whether it be an ops director, head of HR, MD, CEO, FD, all these sort of people that we target on LinkedIn outreach, they're not idiots. They've got their career-based people. They spend time on LinkedIn. They know when they're being tricked. Mm-hmm. So writing content that is short, punchy, and is really just about, to go back to it, about them, is what will resonate and not insult, importantly as well.
Well, that's a big reason as to why you have to be cautious in regards to the sense of it's a conversation between the profile and the prospect. In the same sense. Would you,
as opposed to the company? Yeah.
It's not the company messaging.
No.
It's a PA in the business.
Yeah.
It's a director
in the business. Yeah. And that's so true. We obviously get clients come to us a lot of time. They're like, they sort of think you're going to send messages from the LinkedIn company page, which obviously is funny to us because, we manage over 500 LinkedIn profiles. And that's the beauty of it, right? You come to us, you don't understand it. We do. We do it all for you. All you do is show up when someone's interested. I think the key thing I speak to clients now is, I'm a great example of it. I probably haven't been inside my LinkedIn account for a couple of years because someone manages for me. Only time I would get involved is after a lead's created, it would go to one of our app setters or whatever, and then they would call it, book the appointment, and then I would just show up to an appointment, or it'd be Ollie or one of our other sales guys that would be in the appointment. And I think that's what we try to do for all of our clients. If you're spending time doing outreach, doing content yourself, and trying to do that consistently is really difficult. So for us to be doing that for you, and when only time you touch LinkedIn was when someone's interested, that's really what we're all about. That is what we do for clients at scale, at volume, across multiple profiles.
More cost effective to order a takeaway every day instead of going to the shops because you make that much money, then why would you spend that time sat on LinkedIn
100%.
doing this manually?
It's the same principle of like exactly what Ollie says. It's not worth your time. And also it's very hard to do it at scale yourself. Obviously, one thing we do is facilitate the outreach with multiple profiles. Like one profile outreach is great and it's fine, but you're only going to get so many leads because you can only do so much outreach. Our sort of minimum entry point is 5 LinkedIn profiles. So getting that volume of outreach is what changes the game very quickly, and also allowing you to only spend your time on interested leads. Or have an appointment set with us and you can literally only deal with demos, but each to their own, right? And everyone's got their own team that follow up in different ways, but we can help with either. Right, so you've got a giant whiteboard there with all your writing on.
These are my little notes.
Right, everyone at home, if anyone listens to this, clients, whatever, my business partner has got a giant whiteboard with all of his notes, what he said, and he's just pulled a bit of paper out of his pocket. We've got a massive studio, and he's pulled this out of his pocket. What's in your little bit of paper, mate?
For those people listening at home, you can't even see me looking at my notes.
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry. Yeah, there's a few platforms here going on, so yeah.
I was just looking at kind of the next things, obviously, to move on to keep us on track with the podcast.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've discussed about LinkedIn's fantastic method of outreach, the scale at which you can do it, and the breadth of which you can actually do it. But what are the sort of the LinkedIn limitations, so to speak? Obviously, we've kind of brought that up in the regards to how the information's brought across onto the system, but is there anything to really be looking at in regards to that?
So in terms of LinkedIn limitations, do you in terms of volume or do you in terms of writing the message?
It could be in terms of volume. It could be in terms of you run so many multiple campaigns. Do you need to be doing individual bits of content for each one of those? What can you draw across that makes that make sense?
Well, I mean, I'll take the volume one because it's obviously a huge part of what we do from a sales perspective, because it's really about, we facilitate eyeballs. It's about getting some personal engagement, or what appears to be personal engagement, in front of as many people as possible. And so for, our minimum entry point is normally 5 LinkedIn profiles. And those 5 profiles can roughly connect with attempt to connect to between 3,500 and 4,500 people. And that varies depending on how old your account is, whether it's one of our ID-backed profiles, which is under a certain amount of time age. Basically also the SSI score of the LinkedIn profile, which is another thing LinkedIn create, and then that can facilitate how much you can do. But that's why we say a range for our core product, because it does fluctuate between what LinkedIn do. And you've got to remember, LinkedIn don't really love LinkedIn outreach. They want you spending money on in-mails, and they want you spending money on ads. Now, when we talk to clients, obviously, Mikey does ads for some clients. But there's an example where, from our point of view, we would always start with LinkedIn outreach, just because predominantly the cost per acquisition is better from LinkedIn outreach compared to LinkedIn ads. I think, would you back that up?
Absolutely, yeah. Look, LinkedIn ads they're brilliant, they're effective, but they are more expensive. They're pricey.
Yeah, they're pricey. Yeah.
What we call the cost per mille, which is cost per 1,000 impressions, is significantly more expensive than, for example, clients that we run ads for on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, they're really effective.
You've
got to have a decent budget for LinkedIn ads, whereas with Facebook and Instagram, you can kick off with a much smaller budget.
I think that's from our point of view. Whenever we talk to new clients or we're thinking about working with them, we are basically always saying, let's start with LinkedIn outreach. If it's B2B, like there's certain products where we'll push them to Mikey to say, look, this product is going to be much better through Instagram or Facebook and lead gen. Your CPA is going to be loads better. And we do some consumer products through LinkedIn, but it tends to be like more higher level sales. So we'll do like whiskey or wine investment, property investment. We do concierge services, don't we?
Yes.
Yachts, luxury travel.
Spoke to somebody the other day about private jets.
Yeah. So anyone who wants to sell a consumer product to someone with money, in short, we can obviously do targeting based on the turnover of their business, which would put them in a bracket that would make them a good target for that product.
Yeah.
But then when we get other things that maybe are less relevant, or maybe even more visual products, whether it be a conservatory for your house or something like that, Mikey would be a better fit. It's a bad example. But obviously from our point of view, 80% of what we do is more B2B professional services, whether it be part-time finance directors, CFOs, accountancy software, CRM systems, any business-to-business offering is the majority of what we do. But we do those higher-level personal services, really.
Absolutely, yeah. It's about how you're using the system. Obviously, you've got that one-to-one personalised engagement, but it's how you utilise that in respect to, I'm reaching out to the MD of a business. Am I going to talk to him about the business, or do I need to talk to him about if he wants to go on a luxury holiday in the year?
And what we tend to find is actually you find really good response rate, because it's almost refreshing for them to get something, more exciting, if you like, than a professional service offering. A lot of the time, the value is lower, potentially. Obviously, we sell products to people that sell something for £500, and we sell people that sell CRM systems for £100,000 in our client base. So a wide range. But does that sort of translate to social in that sense? Is it as easy you can't really go B2B like we can, I think.
With social media?
On social, yeah. It's harder for you. I guess the point I'm trying to get to really badly is that targeting on LinkedIn for high net worth individuals is probably a lot better than targeting on Facebook for high net worth individuals.
Actually, no.
Oh, okay. Now we're going to have a big debate here. Right, go on then. Go on then.
Look, it's a common misconception. The Facebook and Instagram is purely a B2C advertising network.
Come on then.
Which is not. So, well, let's just take one of the most recent clients for Lead Lab Social, for example. Won't say the name. They provide tax relief services for landlords. Facebook and Instagram has been far the better performer for those ads, because number one, you can target by job title. So we're targeting landlords that have got their job title
as landlord
on Facebook.
Okay. Well, yeah, you can't do that on LinkedIn.
You can't do it. What?
You can't do landlords on LinkedIn. I don't think that's.
Can you not? Oh, there you go.
I don't even know if it's I'm looking at Harry because he's more likely to know.
And then
I think we've been asked to do landlords before and it doesn't work. But I don't think that's new relatively. You haven't been able to
It's been a little while.
Is it a bit of a while?
And on the high net worth side, there is actually a targeting option, which is high net worth individuals. But aside from that, sometimes you've got to be a little bit cleverer. So for a high net worth individual, I would instantly think about interest. So frequent international traveling, luxury brands, so like Rolex, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Harrods.
Yeah.
Just think outside the box a little bit, especially with Facebook and Instagram ads and your targeting, because there are ways to reach.
And I get that. I guess my argument would be the fact that the beauty from our point of view, if we build a list of companies or a list of MDs, for example, and we know their turnover of their business, then for me, that's a lot stronger from a data perspective, as opposed to interest in, and that's my issue sometimes with social for our clients in the B2B space. That it can be more difficult or challenging. It's quite a niche conversation actually, because it's not a lot of what we do, but there is parts where it is Facebook targeting is spectacular in some ways, but in other ways not as good as LinkedIn.
No, absolutely, especially from a B2B perspective. Look, the calls that I have with potential clients, I always deal with on a case by case basis, because there is some industries or some targeting that just won't fit well on Facebook and Instagram. It's as simple as that.
Which is funny because that's like 80% of our client base. 80% of the Lead Lab client base would not do well on Facebook or ads. Maybe LinkedIn, because but Facebook is a struggle. Facebook and Instagram, I should say, but
then again, interestingly, I'd always say to just test it out as well. To be honest with you, because we've spoken a lot about the C-suite being time poor, for example. When he sits down at 9 o'clock at night, if you've got Facebook and Instagram ads running, you're catching him off guard. He's more open to to ads messaging. You're catching him on a platform that he's comfortable on. So look, there is.
And we often get clients that come to us and they know. Basically, obviously we work across so many sectors. We're not experts in any of them in that sense. We're experts in LinkedIn outreach or social content like yourself. So when they come to us and go, oh, we've done this before, it didn't really work, but this can work. That little bit of knowledge they have in their sector is really knowledgeable for us to go, actually, you should be speaking to Mikey. Because from our point of view, as a group of companies, we just have long-term relationships. Like all of our price points across both companies are very sustainable. And if we can make you money and become a marketing pillar in your business, and this is how we've grown our business, particularly out of COVID, moving to that model, where a sustainable price point that obviously if you're getting a good CPA, why would you stop it? It just becomes a show up and get the leads, whether it be on social ads or LinkedIn outreach with ourselves, basically.
So this was one that is going to either bring you together or kind of throw you guys.
I like that we've been put like,
this is
this is great position, isn't it?
We should probably clarify to the apparent fact checker of this podcast that when you are.
This is the brains of the operation, by the way, guys.
Here we go.
Listen
I
up.
feel like you built this up, but I'm just going to clarify the point you made earlier about advertising on LinkedIn. That you can effectively target people based on their job title. So if people specified their land on LinkedIn, you could get them. However, you'd have to ascertain how likely that is. I.e., a landlord is likely to hold multiple roles and might.
Sorry, I don't disagree with that at all. I was just really more referencing Facebook and Instagram.
I was just clearing up the fact that it sounded like we didn't know, and that wouldn't look so good on the podcast.
Trust me, we know everything. Well, Harry does. Between us, one of us knows it. So that's just a part of this process. And that's why you have a team, right?
Literally the guys on Brainiac when they're like, what's the definition of power? It's like, what? That's right. On to the next one. What I wanted to kind of bring up quickly is obviously the conversation to be about how that content resonates with the prospect in different ways. Obviously, the approach that the LinkedIn side takes is a bit more direct. It's to them, it's how they're going to appreciate that. Whereas the way that I've always kind of seen kind of paid ads and things of that nature is more passive in the sense of they're going to see it and then they can respond to you with that interest. They're going to be coming back to you, which is what makes it a lot more active. In the sense for the LinkedIn side of things, it's, I'm sending this to you. I know that it's something that's going to engage with you and I want you to engage with it.
It's a direct response,
Two kind of examples that you could take from that, different target audience groups. Obviously, managing directors, MDs? Who do you think is going to appreciate what way better? And the other group would be something a little bit more on the B2C side of things, maybe, or even B2B, things like students. How do they kind of equate, and what do you reckon the best approach would be to those?
I guess it's more product relevant, isn't it? The product that you're selling is really what dictates what platform or who you're targeting, I guess.
What, from a paid ads perspective?
Yeah, it could be from both sides. It's how they're going to see that content and how they resonate. Say, for example, you're selling cleaning supplies to a business.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, B2B, you can pick out the exact job title of
Yep.
who you typically speak to in companies like that.
Mm-hmm.
Might be the building manager, the business manager,
Yep.
the CEO. You can open up that conversation directly, as opposed to something like paid ads, in a sense. How would that function in that targeting?
So let's take cleaning products as an example. Especially if it was on Facebook and Instagram and you're trying to sell those ads, I would probably, number one, and it sounds terrible and stereotypical, but whether we like it or not, largely it will be the female of the house that not necessarily does the cleaning, but makes the purchasing decisions.
Controversial.
The purchasing decisions for the weekly
That's very
shop.
true. And most things, to be honest, they make
Most
the
things,
yeah.
exactly.
They are the purchase decision maker in the household. Full
Single
stop.
decision. So look, in terms of that type of product, it would largely be women. Where was I going with this? I can't even remember where I was going with this now.
Sorry.
But also, especially on Facebook and Instagram, there's a lot of Facebook groups. What people don't know is Facebook groups with large or Facebook pages with large followings, you can direct ads to. So, who's that famous cleaning woman?
Yeah, I know the one you mean. My
Mrs.
missus goes about all the time.
Mrs.
It's
Hinch.
yeah. She's making dollar.
She is, and everyone loves her products. But if you are a competitor with a competing cleaning product,
you can just target our audience.
I would be going after her audience, create a lookalike of that audience. There's so many different ways, and it's product by product. Different products will require.
Well, on that subject, I'll give you a challenge because I was talking to some automation social media companies. So basically, what we do on LinkedIn, but via Instagram or Facebook or whatever, again, automated messaging. And let's just take an actual, tangible example we can talk about because it's a company we own. Let's take the podcast as a studio, as a rental.
Mm-hmm.
If we were going to target, because obviously it's geographical as well, so it makes it even more challenging. So you want people local, you want people that are interested in podcasting or marketing, and you want them to be local. That local thing, and this is another one where LinkedIn trumps easily because local is it just makes it very
pay the post.
What I mean is not from an ad perspective, from like a DM target list perspective. So I know obviously if you create an ad on Instagram or Facebook, you can then go, okay, I want them to be 5 meters, 10 meters.
Yeah, we can set the radius and just to be around X.
That's great, but if I want to build a list of individuals, you can't do it the same way, can you, for a DM campaign?
If you wanted to build a data list, you can. You can use a lead form, basically an in-platform lead form on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
Which would obviously get them to enter their first name, last name.
I know, but what I'm talking about, and this is where it gets difficult and challenging, especially for DM outreach. We're way off topic here, but it was a tangible thing that I could actually learn something, so someone else might do as well. So that's great for targeting ads. What I'm talking about, like for us, when we do LinkedIn outreach, we can build 4,000 MDs or 4,000 HR directors, whatever. We've got a list of them. We know the turnover. We can then take that list and we can do outreach to them. To do that on Instagram, you can totally do that if you pull a list of people that follow Mrs. Hinch.
Yeah.
But this is a really niche problem that I had, which I hadn't spoken to you about yet. But if we wanted to target with outreach to people that were either interested in marketing or interested in podcasts, but also happen to be geographically based in and around Exeter or Devon, how do you build that list of that list? You can't do it because the software providers told me that it was very difficult.
It would be difficult.
And they tried to sell me and we can have a go at it sort of thing. And I'm like, well, I've sort of thought about this before, and it's not really a solution.
I mean, if you were in a great position where you had, for example, a CRM list, a big spreadsheet of data that you wanted to target on Facebook and Instagram, you can plug that spreadsheet in as an audience.
Oh, so you can reverse it.
It will basically
from what you'd need their page though, yeah.
So their first name, their last name, their email address, and their town, basically.
Oh, okay. So
then you plug that into Meta.
Let's imagine we pulled from our Cognism.
Mm-hmm.
That would have their LinkedIn page, and this is one thing I asked them: is there any way you can link the LinkedIn page to their Instagram page? Because if we've got a company name, a person's name, their email address, their LinkedIn page, there's no way of us giving you that data and that data becoming an Instagram list or a Facebook list, is there?
No.
Or is there?
So what Facebook and Instagram will try and do is basically, if you plug a data list into it with first name, last name, email, it will try and find those people with that have Facebook or Instagram accounts.
Based on the unique ID of their name,
last name, and email address, yeah.
Oh, and their email address.
Exactly.
Okay. But their work email address might not match their... Oh, but their LinkedIn email address might match their... Who knows?
Exactly. Yeah, so you will get
some
a certain percentage that obviously can't be found.
Yeah.
And that's why we always say, like, the bigger the list, the better, because you've got a 10,000 list, you might only get, a couple of thousand that Facebook can identify. But yeah, you can plug a data list in, and then you can start saving ads to that list.
Okay.
But just to go back to
DM them from an automation point of view.
Oh.
Because that's the thing, you need the list of profiles to do that.
No, again, with that, it'd be better to you'd have to target them and try and get some form of like direct response. So like
So when you see and you create an ad on LinkedIn or on Facebook, I should say, and it says 20 to 25,000 people or whatever this says, is there any way of getting that list?
No.
Facebook.
No.
Thumbs down, Facebook.
It will give you an estimated audience size, but no, you can't even click into it for a preview, so you couldn't see that, the first John
and that's
Smith's
what I don't like about it. And that's the beauty of LinkedIn Outreach. You can literally look at that list of people, can't you?
Yeah.
Hang on. No, not a yeah. You looked at me then like you were like, oh, I'm not sure you can.
No.
We definitely can do that.
I was a step behind. It's just the fact that you said that how you dislike that you just can't access all this information, whereas I'm sure most users are quite appreciative of that. So I was just on the side of that debate, thinking, well, actually, that's probably the best way around.
Well, you can do it on LinkedIn.
In terms of extract their information.
Well, I don't want their information. I just want to know who they are. What I'm saying is, like, from a LinkedIn perspective, obviously through our data providers, they're bought in. It's not like you're doing anything, illegitimate. These are all double verified, bought in, GDPR. Like, if they're on Cognism or they're on LinkedIn, that information is usable information.
Yeah, I mean, now we're sort of creeping into GDPR and on the basis of legitimate interest. And I think a lot of the B2B communication is on the basis that you're talking about something relevant, whereas it's a different mindset.
GDPR for B2B is still very grey area.
Yeah, but not on LinkedIn. Well, you can contact people on LinkedIn, basically, is my point.
Yes, but as a B2B relationship, again, I might be speaking out of turn because this is more GDPR, but in most cases, when you're speaking as a business to another business about a service that's relevant to them, a lot of companies will try and creep in, rightly or wrongly, under legitimate interest. When it's Facebook and you're just picking out personal profiles of any product of your choosing, that's a different game. So I think that's
why you can't do it anyway, so move on.
Yeah, so to draw it back into something a bit more topical.
Sorry, Michael, again.
Another good thing to obviously kind of bring up is drip feeding the content. Obviously, you guys are going to have two different approaches in each way of doing that, such as with the messaging process is there's going to be multiple messages. We don't want to kind of bombard anybody in the same day or 10 different times within the same week. You want to space out that content in a relevant format. Does that work the same way through social media content? Will you retarget the same group of prospects a month later, 6 months later into that journey? Expect to see kind of results and what the conversion rates on those might be.
But you're firstly really asking Harry around the timescales of messaging.
I'm jumping into timescales of messaging, kind of. So, what's that layout? Does each message have a different content, different format to it?
Right, okay.
What does that journey
look like? I think each of the questions today feel like there have been 3 questions in one, but okay, here we go. I've
got to keep you talking, so I've got to throw in a few questions for you to answer and then come back to the ones.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to refine for people listening, but okay, so in terms of, actually the first point I want to make is you said about the amount of times you get in touch and the frequency. And I would say that's probably the key difference, Mikey, is, again, I feel like I'm just throwing out loads of old marketing rules today, but one of them is the rule of
Not
seven.
not like you, mate.
Not like me. You want to
Textbook. That's his nickname in the office.
Well, it's not necessarily it's irrelevant in this context, but one of the older rules is the rule of seven. The idea that it takes 7 touch points for someone to invest in your product or service.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely more relevant with social content. As you mentioned, it's a lot more passive. But you try sending 7 direct messages to someone, and you're going to see a different result.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, touch points are very different. It comes back to what we said at the start. There is very much a case of a limited window compared to content marketing. So with that in mind, I'd say to answer the first part of your question about timing and frequency, it does depend. It depends on each company and each business, if nothing else, than for their ethos. I mean, we've seen direct messaging work really well. But for some brands, it might not align with them. They might consider it too aggressive for them. And of course, that's the highest priority in a lot of cases, really, is representation. So I'd say it does depend. I think generally speaking, if I was to give a rough average, I'd say probably 3 to 4 messages seems to work quite well. But as you mentioned, the timing is quite important.
Over what time period would you normally do that?
Yeah. So, so in terms of timing, usually about a week is probably a safe space. The timing between each of those messages as well is relevant. We've referred to connection requests opening the door, sort of opening the window to do weird stuff.
Oh yeah, you're going back to it, yeah.
I'd rather not, but
that's our House of Horrors.
I'm just trying to speak in everyone's language.
Yeah. Get down to our level, Kat, come on.
Well, okay. So when you send out the connection request,
you're in the house.
I'm in the not in the house.
No, sorry, you knocked on the door.
I hope this isn't confusing for everyone listening. But so it's a door now. I thought it was a window.
No, I mean, I wouldn't fit through a window, so that's not going to work. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to fleetingly return back to LinkedIn.
Go back to normality, sorry.
So when you send a connection request and the person accepts it, there's almost definitely such thing as answering that too quickly. I mean, the automation would give itself away if somehow this person was able to just respond and send you a message within a minute of you accepting the request. Yeah. And I think anyone would get that impression. We've referenced before C-level people, marketing people having that sense of cynicism in these channels. And I think that's definitely going to trigger when you see a message immediately upon accepting a request. So I think it's almost essential to have a time gap there. And again, it's weird where you create this automated process, but ultimately you're kind of acting in the opposite interest. So you're trying to just act like a human. So when you send a message, you wouldn't send it straight away. Realistically, it's probably within a day. You might notice and think, oh, I'll message that person back. So probably 24 hours is a good space there. And if you want to send follow-ups, again, it's exactly what you should do in real life. If you just call someone about anything, you probably just give it a couple of days in between. So a day, couple of days, that's probably where you
want to. It's also like based on where they are in their time. Are they on holiday? Are they busy at that time? There's no point doing it and then doing it straight away after that. They're in the same place or the same time or structure or whatever they may be.
So this is something I was thinking, is not everybody is on LinkedIn 24/7. Some people might periodically come back to it, in which case the next kind of thing to venture into is there, a difference in kind of the individual, as in the job role, somebody that's an IT manager in a large London-based company, which is constantly hit on LinkedIn. They're a very active individual to try and be reaching out to. Would you need to put a few extra messages into those over a longer period of time so that you've, again, got the best chance of being in the top 10 messages as and when they do get that chance to check their LinkedIn?
Yes, it does vary. We've talked a lot about people being time poor, and we've talked about other people who appreciate the detail. I think one other aspect of that is when you're messaging people, and when you're messaging people with a very specific role, maybe a step down from C-level, maybe 2 steps down, is you can refer to more specific needs, and which means you can be more targeted with the messaging, and probably means you can cover more ground. I completely forgot what I'm talking about. Can we do this again?
I've been there, buddy.
Yeah. What do you want to ask?
It's really hard because I've already answered these questions.
Do you want me?
So what did I say last week?
It's like I've got stuff.
Yeah, that's the
like I know, like you're going to ask, you might ask me that later, so I'm holding it back. So I feel like I've got half of what I'm about to say that I haven't said yet, because I know it might be coming up later.
Well, we can just move on, mate, if you want.
No, what's the question? Let me think about it.
Ollie probably had about 5 for you.
Yeah, let me throw in another 6. So the question is there a difference in the type of individual that you're reaching out to by their job? I.e., if you're reaching out to an IT manager in a large London-based company, they're on the hit list for a lot of different individuals. They're going to be contacted very often, but the nature of their job, they're probably not going to be spending 24/7 on LinkedIn to respond to these messages. An individual like that, would you put a few extra steps into that journey sequence? Would you increase the time between those messages? So again, you've got the best chance of being the top 10 messages as and when they do have that chance to ultimately log on and view what you're putting out there.
So do you do different timescales depending on job titles or different?
That's a much shorter way to answer my question.
I wouldn't say it would be based on job roles. I think we've said before about being respectful of each other's time.
Yeah.
I think it'd always be less respectful to assume that people are busier than others. For example, our managers are going to be more or less busy in C-suite. So I wouldn't apply it in that way. I'd say it's the style and the approach of messaging might be relevant. Again, we've talked about direct aggressive messaging. We've talked about light follow-ups. I think the style of content, the approach would dictate the length. But I think being respectful of time and suddenly be disrespectful to then assume someone's busier than someone else.
I have a quick question. What is the shortest amount we do and the most we do for a client?
Okay. So
I think I know the answer, but
we'll cross-reference later.
Yeah. Well, no, I'll embarrass you now. I'll embarrass you now. If I
Definitely
think
know
you
the
say it.
shortest that we've seen.
Yeah, it depends on a campaign's objective. When we're talking about content, we're kind of talking on the basis of the purpose would be to book a meeting or something similar. Now, we've done a lot of campaigns with a lot of different objectives. Some common examples would be webinar signups, things like that. And some have just been really open in case of opening conversations. We've talked about people who have a lot, or companies have a lot to offer. Sometimes there's a really long buying cycle. Is that the term?
Yeah.
There's a long buying cycle in that. And so it's not something that is going to be achieved in a transaction, in a conversation on LinkedIn. It's not going to be achieved. And both parties know that. So you don't even try to do that. What you do is try and open the conversation. And with that in mind, we do have campaigns where sometimes it's in the best interest to send that first response and really deal with them on a case-by-case basis and nurture that, because maybe you take a consultative approach, an open approach.
But that potentially has a negative respect on its response rate, I guess, because obviously if you send less messages, you're less likely to get less responses.
There might be correlation with that. And what I mean by that is if it's a long buying cycle, it might be higher value. If it's high value, you're looking at turning over maybe less. And if there's fewer conversations in question, it might be more.
And also relevant to client brand. If client brand doesn't feel comfortable at 6 messages, and we do have some clients that are comfortable at 6 messages, if I recall.
Yeah, I mean, some common patterns is, I said before, the rough average was about 3 to 4,
Yeah.
and then a couple of days in between.
We've got a couple of 2s, haven't we? And we've got some.
Yeah, as I
6s.
mentioned earlier, the 2s would be people
But
who
we've
just
never
want
had
to
more
get
than
their
6, have we?
who just want to get their foot in the door, open the window, or however you want to describe it,
Yeah.
and then run with it from there, because they know each conversation is going to be very specific, because it's a long buying cycle, it's quite an intricate sale, so to speak. And I think in the other sense that, coming back to your point about brand ethos, people are a little more aggressive. Sometimes they feel that those later messages are they sort of do or die. They've almost got nothing to lose at that point. That is borderline quite aggressive.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, they feel they can afford a few more messages, maybe just further in between. So maybe do a couple of days, and then do another one a few weeks later, or just to roll the dice, throw in a month later, just because you never know, and it's just the sake of doing the outreach. So it does align a lot with brand ethos. I wouldn't say one way is more effective than the other, because it really depends on
What's right
the
for them.
objective and the ethos of the company. And so that's essentially, I believe that's important in all of this, because you don't want to compromise that.
Would there be a question around urgency then as well then? So obviously, typically the process is you get the connection request, you're into the direct messages, you follow up with the sequence. But you mentioned like webinars and stuff earlier. A webinar's got a time frame on it. It's going to be happening on the 27th of October. On that day, you've only got limited length of outreach, so you don't want to be pouring too much time into introducing it, going much further with that. What would you do in that sort of
We just hope that they're organised, I guess. Now, like you want to be. Do you know what I mean? If a client comes to us and says, "We've got a webinar. We've got a webinar in 3 days. I want you to send a message to 5,000 people, like a 3 or 4." You'd be like, "Well, we can do that, but it's not going to look great because we're going to get a message every day for 3 or 4 days."
With any campaign, I'd say this build up. I mean, again, I feel like this will be leaning more into sales, that there is something to be said about creating urgency. I don't want to sort of reopen an old wound when it comes to that kitchen, Toby, but I would say that too much urgency can insult someone's intelligence.
People,
So I think there's a balance. You mentioned about webinar. There is a sense of timeliness in the sense. it comes back to what's in their interest. As you kind of alluded to, Toby, if it is quite urgent, it doesn't have to be their problem, but it can be of value to them. I think that's the balance.
Oh, sometimes, yeah, because it creates urgency because of the time.
Well, it might be.
Well, a lot of times there's no urgency. It's a product. An event can create that, can't it?
Yes, but we're talking strictly about events. There's other factors of timing.
Of course, yeah.
One could be, and a quite common one in a lot of our campaigns will be schemes, local governments, things like that.
Yeah.
Is that has an urgency, but it's always like a third party urgency, and it's not anyone's fault.
Yeah.
But it's opportunistic.
Legal changes or
in
whatever.
that person's interest. Do it
Compliance.
now before this scheme is over.
Yeah. We've had telecom stuff like that, haven't we, before?
Yeah. Oh, the PTSN switch off, I think.
Yeah, there's a couple of those. Yeah.
So I think urgency can work because it's mutually beneficial. You're being urgent to help them, and that's different.
Yeah.
Not I'm being urgent because I'm trying to sell you something.
And I'm not organised on my event, basically.
Or I'm not urgent because I'm not organised. Those two examples. Yeah.
Well, I think as far as things go, that's a good kind of moment to actually wrap up today's podcast. It's been fantastic having you all here, and if you've liked what you're watching, make sure to smash that like button. Leave us a comment on your way out, because we'd always love to hear from you. Jump into any questions you may have.
I was just going to add, if you want to check out our 3-minute explainer page, you can click the link below. It will show you what the LinkedIn outreach guys / the Lead Lab do as a business in 3 minutes. And you can book a call with me, Ollie, or any of the other sales team to be educated and see how we would do it for you. We also have our new editor who happened to off his own back, what a legend, without asking, get excited and create us another intro. We've got an intro already, don't we? I'm sure you've had it at the start of this.
Yeah, you would have.
An audio intro, I should say. So he made this off his own back. It's probably not quite on brand for us, but I think it's quite a nice little play out. It's quite entertaining. And we'll be definitely making some edits to it.
Yeah, definitely a great way to leave you wanting more.
Yeah, I feel like you're in a rap video, but I'll get it on.
From the 90s.
So Harry, we can wrap up on that, and we'll look forward to seeing you on episode 4.
Episode 4, it will be next, yeah.
Yeah, episode 4 / our second one in the studio.
Cheers, everybody, for taking the time to listen to us. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll leave you with this.
Cool.
Nice one.
Your network's pride. We dive deep into marketing trends and brand building flair. Connecting with leaders, opportunities to share. From outreach tactics to ads to shine, content creation and dynamics redefined. Expert interviews and case studies unfold. Tips to master LinkedIn, make your journey bold. Subscribe now, join the crew, elevate your LinkedIn game, it's all for you.